Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowicz, and this is the 400th episode of Heartland Journal podcast. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't by now, and you haven't figured that out by now. I don't know what to tell you, but pass it around. Thanks for doing it. These hats are for sale, by the way. If you like them, DM me. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person, maybe, making a positive change in our community, and lovers of truth, for sure. Today, we are talking with special guests, nobody and everyone, or at least the surprises producer Steve has dug into the vault, deep, I'm told, into the vault for us on our 400th anniversary show. So real quick, if this is your first time, not your 400th, like P1 listener Ed, the horse guy, when I say in the intro, lovers of truth, we mean it. We've been blessed to have guests that the mainstream won't invite, mostly because they didn't want you to hear the truth, be it about sugar, vaccines, J6, what a woman is, a lot more things than I thought we'd cover when I started this show 4 years ago or whatever, almost 5. So let's see what Steve has in store for us on this special Steve and Steve reunion show. Hey, producer Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing great, and I've pulled up this is going to go back to May 17th, 2022. Basically, when you and I first started working together in my studio here in Linwood, Washington. Here we go. Welcome to the Mill Creek View podcast, bringing you views, news, and interviews with your host, Stephen Abramowicz.
Hello, Mill Creek. How you doing? Today is episode 1, season 1 of my new podcast, the Mill Creek View in Review. And I am here to read to you, so you don't have to. No, just kidding. I really want you to read it. But I'm just going to give you some highlights of our newest edition, volume 31, issue 9, May 2022A.
So, Steve, do you remember that day?
I remember, I forgot until just now, the typewriter. I loved the typewriter as the beginning because this whole thing came out of a newspaper, a good old-fashioned hometown, delivered door-to-door by kids 8 years and over, in a little sliver of America, Mill Creek, Washington, with the Mill Creek View. And so, yeah, episode 1, it's flooding back to me now, but what did you say, 2022? Is that like
Yes, May 17th, 2022.
Wow.
And your very first guest is right here.
Pension plan in a year. No surprise, usdebtclock.org shows are at a 7th grade level.
There it is again.
All right, welcome back. I am here with Tamborine Borelli, running for Secretary of State of the great state of Washington. Hi, Tamborine. How are you?
Great, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. It never ends. It's always an adventure. So thank you for taking time out of the campaign trail to talk to me. I appreciate it. You are my first interview for the Mill Creek View podcast.
So,
wow, that feels like so long ago. You said 2022. So that rate was what activated me. And the fact that I could actually get a politician running for a statewide office like Secretary of State was actually pretty impressive for the first one. But I literally started this show for women like her that were conservative, but the stupid leftist Seattle Times wouldn't talk to Republicans. So I figured, I have this newspaper now, let's invite them onto a podcast. Kind of a new invention at the time. Rush Limbaugh hadn't even started releasing his radio shows on podcasts yet. So we got her running for Secretary of State. I also got Steve Hobbs, who's a Democrat, maybe the last Democrat I ever had on, who was running. So all of a sudden, little Steve in Mill Creek, Washington is interviewing people running for one of the most important offices in that messed up state. She lost, like all the Republicans, including Vincent, good old Vincent giving me a good dose of reality that being a conservative news outlet was going to be a pain. And of course, 4.5 years later, I can say, yeah, it is.
well, I remember you did have former Sheriff Lubbock, who was, I forget what his position was. But
he was running for Senate. He was running for state Senate. Yeah, I had Hughes.
He was
Not
Democrat.
Hughes. The three-time recall attempted sheriff of Snohomish County on. I had Dino Rossi on. I mean, his historic relevance is that he lost the closest governorship race. Well, he won 2 recounts, and then they stopped the third one and said, "You lose." And like, what? And that started the whole snowball, because no Republican has ever won in Washington State ever since, even though we fought the good fight. So yeah, this is fun stuff, Steve. We're starting off with a bang.
Well, here's the next one. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Podcast, bringing you views, news, and interviews with your host, Stephen Abramowicz.
Hi there, Mill Creek. Man, I love that intro. Sometimes I listen to it too long. Thank you, producer Steve, for putting that in there. I love it. Welcome back for episode 10. Woo woo, double digits, yo. And I must say, my most anticipated and longest time coming episode really should have been first, as you'll hear, but no time like the present. So let's go. But first, business. For more information about the Mill Creek View podcast and Mill Creek View, your hometown newspaper since 1991, please visit us at millcreekviewonline.com, and please subscribe to the show at podomatic.com. It really helps us move up the charts. Thank you, and stay tuned at the end for bonus content with the great one, Ari Hoffman, and me. I think you'll really like it. Okay, as usual, let's check into this latest edition of the Mill Creek View newspapers hitting the streets today.
We say, hey, I think the Seattle Times just told me that I didn't have the experience or something to run for. I'm a great public servant, but I don't have the experience to run for Congress. And as I read that, I thought, wow, I can serve the public well, but just not at that level. It just means that the expectation of what a public servant is for the people has just gotten so convoluted at this point that I don't even think those people understand what a public servant is. It's somebody who has a good heart and a willingness to learn and a dedication to something bigger and more important than itself or its own family.
So I had to jump ahead there because I wanted to skip our intro, but there is another historical show. Talk to us about who that individual is and how that went on to become quite the relationship with the show.
Oh, man. So that's Vincent Cavallari. He's still with me. He writes for HLJ every Monday, goes out in the e-newsletter every Monday morning. Hasn't missed a week since we launched on April Fool's Day 2024, because he and I are obviously pretty big fools. I remember getting the phone call saying, hey, can you come out to dinner with me? And her name was Nola, the widow at the time, but wife of Fred Philbrook, who ran the Heartland Journal newspaper, not the Heartland Journal, the Mill Creek View newspaper since 1992. And so I said, sure, I'll come out to dinner. So we go out to dinner, sit down, wife and I, and they look at me and they said, Fred said if anything happens to him in hospital, since they wouldn't give him, visitation rights during COVID and all that shenanigans, what do you want to do with the paper, Fred? And they said, call Steve. And I said, why? Why call me? Well, I'm a business guy. What do I know about this? And they said, we just think you can do it. We think you can get it back up and running. And Vincent had been writing for them for about a year. And so it was important for them. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And, 4.5 years later, still doing it. It was supposed to be like get it back up and running and then leave. And it took a long time, but I did get it back up and running. But he was also the Seattle host of Mill Creek View when I left and did Mill Creek View, Tennessee. He's a natural talent on air. You could hear it in his voice. He's a deputy sheriff. He was under Fortney, who we just talked about, who they tried to recall him so many times, and he ultimately lost, in a terrible election to a wokester. City councilman, a vet, Republican, is in the most ungodly part of America. And as a Christian and a grandfather, I know it drives him nuts. But imagine being in law enforcement 30 years, dealing with those Antifa nuts, and then listen to them come to the city council meetings and complain about defunding the police. I mean, that's Vincent. So God bless him for all he's done. And he's been I don't know, a stalking horse or just a real inspiration for me to just keep this thing going. And blessedly, he's still with me,
Yeah,
forcing me to do this out of pocket.
yes, exactly. I remember having him in my studio, and we had a great time of camaraderie. And he was so professional. I mean, the guy would write out his monologues, and I'm like, that's kind of when I thought that's really good that he's got this monologue thing down like pat. And he had great guests. He had a plethora of guests that were just like, yes, conservatives. He even had Gays Against Groomers, and which we will touch on a little later on in the show.
Jewish Federation on October 7th.
Yep.
After the, yeah.
I mean, he had a lot of people, and due to many circumstances, he decided that he needed to step back from a lot of his obligations, I guess, and just focus on his work and his family and stuff. But yeah,
he's a miracle. He had a
Yes.
blood clot in his neck during COVID, and they thought he was a goner, and most people do die from it, but at some reason it stopped there, and he had a vision of Jesus holding it with his finger while he was basically in a coma. And he
Wow.
survived to this day, and he's back, physically fit, doing his duties as a sheriff. But yeah, he's a miracle.
Well, speaking of duties, here's another friendly voice in a transition time. Welcome to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Hello, Mill Creek View podcast listeners. Last day this week in my studio with producer Steve in Linwood, Washington. Today, back to Tennessee Friday. I have another great guest for you, focused on the Evergreen State and our nation today, with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest Jonathan Cho of the Discovery Institute and the Cho Show in studio with me today. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us on Amazon Music or Spotify at Mill Creek View Washington podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so you won't miss a single episode. And thank you for listening. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with Jonathan Cho. Jonathan Cho is a journalist and a senior fellow with Discovery Institute's Center on Wealth and Poverty, covering homeless issues for its Fix Homelessness initiative. Prior to joining Discovery, Cho spent several years as one of the lead reporters at KOMO TV, consistently the top-rated television station in Seattle. His in-depth stories on crime and deep-dive investigations into the homeless crisis led to measurable results in the community, including changes in public policy. Cho has more than 2 decades of experience in TV news behind the scenes and in front of the camera for ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, and Tribune. He has also been nominated and honored with multiple industry awards, including an Emmy. Cho spent several years teaching classes on emerging media and entrepreneurship to underprivileged youth in inner-city Chicago. Cho is a New England native and Boston University Journalism School graduate. Hello, Jonathan. Thank you for coming in the studio with me. It's been a moment. How are you?
Hey, I forgot about all that. So thanks for the reminder, Steve.
It's always nice to be reminded of your...
So that set a couple precedents. First, Steve really got going on how he introduces his client, his guests. He is very, very thorough. We've had hundreds of guests say, wow, what an amazing introduction. So, Steve, that kind of set the precedent, but it also was a transition in your life. Talk to us about that transition from Mill Creek to Tennessee, which took place pretty much about that time.
Well, yeah, it brought back memories when I said, my last in studio, because I spent 6 weeks on a couch with me and my co-pilot Caroline, with the family already in Tennessee, getting ready to go. So I must have done that in the same clothes that I've been in for a couple of days
Yes,
when we
yes,
did
you
it.
did.
But before I talk about that, John Cho, he got fired from ABC for saying nice things about the Proud Boys during the whole Antifa rise up, whatever. And I just wrote a popular article about how the Proud Boys could have offset these Antifa nuts that Chase Jonathan with a machete, and Gavin McGinnis and Enrique Torrio both read my column. Gavin came on the show last week, and we got to talk about Andrew Breitbart, which I used to know when I was in LA, and Gavin's 7-year X ban, which is a record, making my 7-day ban pale in comparison, but I'm conservative too. So we all got punished. But Cho and Katie Daviscourt and Brandy Cruz, they were just back at the White House last week getting Antifa designated as domestic terrorists, only took 15 years, but we were warning folks, all of us. So, by the way, after that firing from ABC, the last governor that you had, Jay Inslee, he refused to acknowledge him as a real journalist, even though I've just read off all those credentials. And even though he's 1,000 times more a journalist than the rest of them at Seattle Times. So I gave him a Mill Creek View press pass and got him everywhere he needed to go, which is funny to me because the whole reason I had a press pass in college for the Daily Trojan, appropriately named USC newspaper, was so I didn't have to wait in line in Manhattan Beach bars at St. Patrick's Day, the article I wrote. So who knew 30 years later, I'd be giving him one of my company for real news that would end up getting him in front of the White House and Donald Trump and Melania telling him Seattle and Portland are in big trouble. So yeah, amazing. He was my professional news guy whenever I had questions like, what am I doing and how should I do this? He actually told me to go on Twitter. He said, you should be on Twitter. Everyone else is. I am. I'm making money on it. You should be there. So we are at Heartland Journal. You can see it right there on the screen.
Yeah, that was again another projecting a forward and backwards, but another very influential person within that realm. And also, the bumper music changed because we went from Mill Creek to Mill Creek View, Tennessee, and a lot of our newer listeners don't understand that you maintained the Mill Creek View for quite some time before you transitioned over to the Heartland Journal, which we'll get into a little later. But here, let's take a listen to this one.
Find it when you find no love at home, and there's nothing cold as ashes after the fire is gone.
Brandon Lewis, distant cousin of the killer, Jerry Lee Lewis. No, not the cousin he married, but the one that founded the TennesseeConservativeNews.com website in 2020. Motivated by an anger toward Republicans not acting like Republicans and dedicated to holding elected offices and officers accountable, Brandon is the only voice besides me and the Mill Creek View podcast willing to speak truth to power and inform the uninformed electorate on what they need to know Nashville is up to with their taxpayer dollars, and how they're behaving towards fellow Republicans outside the establishment. Often a lonely place to be. Frequent contributor to the now off-the-air Alex Abernathy show. Yes, we are without Tennessee's anchorman, but we still have BL and TC, Brandon Lewis, Tennessee conservative, from way down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Those who know him from the news may not know he also grew his painting business to $1 million+ in sales and 20 employees during the 2008 recession and went on to sell it for a significant profit in a struggling economy. Then decided to flush it away into a conservative donation-only website. Served as political consultant to U.S.
That
Senate,
sounds familiar,
US
Steve.
Congress, state, local officials.
I haven't sold a business yet.
To the painting industry and applies knowledge as it relates to marketing of repaint services. Author and speaker, and it's this speaking prowess that got him invited here today. Brandon, how the heck are you, and why are you so darn progressively liberal?
Well, I tell you what, that is a rousing introduction. I don't believe that I've heard so many positive, untrue things said about me all at once. I will have to mail you a 20, which with Joe Biden's economy today, it's probably announced. By the time it gets to you, it'll be a 10. And so there you have it.
Oh, Brandon is such a witty guy. I always loved having him on. We even talked to us about the whole how you met Brandon and how that all came about, because he ended up having a regular spot on your show.
Yeah, BL, great guy. We used to call that, oh, let's go Brandon segment, because that was popular during the Biden years. Yeah, 400 episodes, it's a little difficult to keep consistent having one every month, but I love the guy. So I actually found him when I was still in Seattle, looking online for news, from Tennessee, knowing I was going to move here. And the media here is as liberal as Seattle and San Francisco, believe it or not. So when I found his website, TennesseeConservativeNews.com, it's in the name, Conservative News. So I couldn't wait to meet the guy. So as a matter of fact, he used to do these Patriot Summits once a year in Nashville in a hotel, and I left Seattle a week earlier than I wanted to. So that Jonathan Cho show was a week earlier I left a week earlier than I wanted to because I had to get to downtown Nashville to meet the guy. I have pictures on my phone that I still post sometimes of him and me without a beard. I don't have it again, but I didn't have it then. Much younger, less gray hair. But yeah, he's been my Jonathan Cho in Tennessee, even though he's in a different time zone. He literally, helps me navigate through the wiles of journalism on a shoestring budget like he does it too. I filled in for him on his podcast. I advertised with him. He posts my op-eds I write an op-ed every Friday at heartlandjournal.com, and he's posted them in his website, and his person, Jason Vaughn, who does the editing for him. So just been a real supportive. We spoke together in City Hall about illegal immigration when no one else was paying attention to it.
Yep.
And I'm actually going to Knoxville in 2 weeks to go speak in front of his county's Republican Party because they listen to my show and they read my stuff through him. So he has been an amazing supporter of everything that I'm trying to do. And that is true. That Abernathy guy has left, and we went from 3 to 2. And I just hope that he keeps doing it just like I keep doing it before one of us goes bankrupt, because we can't do it just one.
That's right. Well, like I said, I always enjoyed having him on, and he always gave us a lot of pain about Steve and Steve, and I'd get to pipe in occasionally on that show. But here's another show that kind of set the pace in a different direction. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast, y'all. Had an unexpected day off yesterday. Who knew it snows in Vegas? So, a special Friday episode for your rock and roll drive home. Hope you like it. We are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, very special guest, Kyle Seraphin. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcast and socials at Mill Creek View Tennessee. Hey, if you're listening and you like what you hear, please hit the like button. It helps us a lot, and thanks for doing it. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with Kyle Seraphin. Kyle Seraphin is an indefinitely suspended FBI special agent and U.S. Air Force veteran. A graduate of the University of Oklahoma, Seraphin managed restaurants, sold computer technology and radio and airtime to commercial clients. Ooh, I need that. And performed financial analysis for a major movie studio prior to enlisting at 27 years old. Oh man, producer Steve, I could write a book on the scams they pull with the numbers. Okay, sorry. On active duty, he graduated from a series of difficult training programs, including Combat Control Selection, U.S. Air Force Combat Dive, and Pararescue Indoctrination. Seraphin was the distinguished graduate of the CCT operator course at Kessler Air Force Base and graduated from the Joint University of New Mexico U.S. Air Force Pararescue Paramedic School. After separating from the Air Force, Seraphin worked on an ambulance as a lead paramedic and in a high-volume emergency room in Austin, Texas. He attended the FBI Academy at Quantico in the summer of 2016 and was assigned to the Washington field office. While in Washington, D.C., Seraphin worked counterintelligence investigations for 2 years before transferring to a specialty surveillance team. After 3 years on the team, including time as an assistant and primary team leader, Seraphin took a voluntary transfer to New Mexico to work criminal cases. During that time, he provided a number of protected disclosures to the House and Senate Judiciary Committee staff and was indefinitely suspended in April 2022 and had his security clearance suspended in June of 2022. Since the suspension, Seraphin has appeared to speak about corruption and political bias within the FBI on Fox News, Newsmax,
and Salem Media TV. He is a regular guest on the Dan Bongino radio show, broadcast nationally. I've asked him to come on my show. He's my mentor, but doesn't know it yet, and he has been interviewed by Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Jesse Kelly. He has been interviewed for print by the Washington Times, American Greatness, Undercover DC, Tracy Bean, she's awesome, and independent journalist Matt Taibbi. His public media debut was on September 22nd, 2022 on the Dan Bongino podcast. The 2 one-hour segments have gathered millions of audio downloads and more, 1 million views on Rumble between them. And now the Mill Creek View podcast, big time now. Get ready for the fame. Seraphin is a practicing Catholic whose pro-life stance and belief in the oath of office led to refusing the COVID-19 jab and blowing the whistle on the FBI's misuse of resources to target parents protesting at school board meetings. His additional whistleblower activities include disclosing sexual misconduct by senior FBI management, abuse of the FBI's 702 FISA authority, an intelligence product which named most veterans and retired Green Beret Mike Glover's company Amcon as potential militia violent extremists, and documents showing the FBI was participating in election interference under the guise of policing misinformation. Seraphim describes himself as a husband and father first, an American citizen second, and now former FBI agent, a distant third. I'm glad you survived Snowmageddon 2023. Who knew it snows in Vegas, right? How are you today, sir?
I'm doing so good.
That's a heck of a bio. I had to rush through it for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's very it was exhaustive.
Well, you also say most importantly, father and husband.
So again, that was an exhaustive, 4 minutes, Steve?
That's what it reminds me the most of, is I don't do that anymore, because what a waste of my guest's time to have them sit there and listen to me ramble about all that. Although I do remember that someone was like, "You did that all in one breath?" Yeah, but I shouldn't have done it. So now I'm better at that now. You had to learn. I think that was like episode 40 or 41 or something.
Yeah, and talk about the impact of having him on, because that really got us set up to talk to people who were whistleblowers, eventually many January 6th survivors. Talk to us about that, because that did kind of notch the bar up as far as the direction of who you were bringing on at that time.
Yeah, survivors is an interesting way to put it, because it's not like it was from COVID, it was from arrests by the DOJ. But yes, so what we ultimately learned from him, and I was just a podcast listener, during COVID, like everybody else. I was out there on my exercise routine with the dog and listening to Bongino, and like I said, Rush wasn't out there yet, but I was listening to Charlie Kirk. I was listening to a lot of folks, and that episode is before Kyle had his own show.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him. He had this like kind of weird studio behind him, and we asked him like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to start a show." So I'm like, "Oh, great, another podcaster," but before me. So, well, no, it couldn't be, because I was interviewing on a podcast. So he was joining the 4.4 million of us. And so what the point was is that CNN wasn't going to have him anymore. Fox didn't have him anymore, but he used to go on Bongino's show, and they were these lovers of truth. These were these guys who were whistleblowing at big risk. A lot of them, they were called the what do they call them? Not the expendables or just deplorables, but they were something of that nature, where they could be ignored and not paid for years because they had told the truth, and the higher ups at the FBI didn't like it. So the entire show is kind of based on that. So we've had authors that said, the fall of the FBI. We had Steve Friend, another whistleblower from the FBI, twice. We had the J6ers, a long list of them, everyone from live studio audience with Colton Maccabee, and the guy with the bullhorns. I can't remember his name off. Canberry, I think.
Oh, the shaman, American shaman.
Yeah, exactly. Just as many as we could get that would come talk to us. Ivan, yeah, because these were the folks that weren't getting mainstream coverage when they had something to say, truth or not, right? But we hope that they come on with truth. And a lot of them did tell their truth, and it was truth that you never would have heard. Martha Byrne, we'll talk about, I think, later. She, her husband was, a PI, and they were just trying to bury him and get rid of him and get him out of the store. So that is how this all came about. And so when I had Kyle so early on, even before he became, a known entity, now they've all started infighting. This is what happens in conservative media is,
Yep.
you're MAGA one day and the next day, you're on the other side, and the liberals love you now. Now they'll bring you on CNN all day long, but not him. So yeah, Kyle was a great early one, as was Steve Friend, who I actually got to know pretty well as a friend. And he came out with his book subsequently. And so I just knew that these stories were very important, like Jonathan Cho, and would lead to great things once the word was out. And we were just very fortunate to have him early.
Well, here's another one. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
In 1987-88 year. On the heels of his sitcom success, Cameron appeared in his first feature film in 1986, the Robin Williams, Kurt Russell Glory Days comedy The Best of Times. Cameron and his trademark smirk would grace covers of a raft of teen magazines. He played the father of Dudley Moore in Like Father, Like Son, 1987, firmly establishing as the resident star of Growing Pains, with fans sending him some 10,000 letters a week. In his autobiography, Still Growing, the family of his first girlfriend initially exposed the 17-year-old to evangelical Christianity. Cameron experienced what he would later describe as a life-changing encounter with Jesus and declared himself born again. He and wife Chelsea Noble are among the founders of Camp Firefly and the Firefly Foundation, which sponsors camping trips for terminally ill children and their families. They have 6 children, 4 of whom were adopted: Jack, Isabel, Anna, and Luke, and 2 biological kids, Olivia Rose and James Thomas Cameron. Mr. Cameron, how are you today, sir?
Steve, could you repeat all of that?
Not in one breath, no. I hope I did you justice.
My goodness. My whole life just flashed before my eyes as you were reading these things. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So
Talk to us about getting him on, because he was the first.
You never phrase verb. So Kirk Cameron, that was a thrill for me. Growing up in the 70s, I used to watch him on TV. Probably made a few wardrobe decisions at Teen Tiger shop at Macy's because of his, Mike Seaver's character. I'm an only child, so him and Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties and Ricky Schroeder and Different Strokes, kind of showed me what families and siblings were like, and humor. I'm not nearly as funny as the writers on that show, but he's gone on to be the new Mr. Rogers with his Iggy the Puppet and Mr. Kirk show. And I just had on Andrew Kilzer from Texas Filmworks that directed that. So small little town here. He came out with some children's books. He goes to my church here now. He also left California for Tennessee. So I was able to meet the man in person, not just on Zoom as we did the show. So really, the faith-based industry, or the conservative, patriotic, MAGA-inspired industry, is very small. And when I was growing up in California, you never think you're going to meet these celebrities or whatever. But now I bump into them all the time. I saw him at John Rich's house of all places. So yeah, that was a big time fanboy moment for me, to be able to talk to somebody that I watched on TV for all those many years as a kid myself.
Yeah, and it also brought the first of many actors onto your show, which we'll cover a couple later on in the show. But it puts you on the map for, hey, this is a great platform to get on and share about my book or the new movie or whatever it is. And
Well,
so
what I've done, Steve, is, just like with Kyle Seraphin, a whistleblower FBI, we've had success getting cancel culture actors and actresses to come on the show. People who, may not have been able to work anymore in the industry because it was so woke, like Jennifer O'Neill, whose very first movie was John Wayne, a legend,
Yep.
who couldn't go on anymore. So yeah, by having our little niche of people who are conservative, patriotic, but also famous. Once upon a time, they say yes, they come on. Nick Searcy, which we'll talk about later too, same thing. So we were the anti-cancel culture guys.
Yes, we were. Well, here's another trendsetter. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest, Ambassador Sam Brownback. But first, for more information about four in the latter election garnering the highest number of votes for any office in Kansas history. Wow. During his tenure as senator, he was a member of the Senate's Appropriations and Judiciary Committee. Very much. That came from youramericanflagstore.com, promo code MCView. But I'm glad that you're here with us today. Thank you for taking time out to speak to me. Which do you prefer, ambassador or senator?
I don't know. I mean, ambassador's most recent title. Senator was a title. I really enjoyed that job, but I gave a term limits pledge and I said I'd only serve 2 full terms, and so I did. But you usually go by your current title, and my current title is Grandpa.
Grandpa.
I love that, and I wish everybody went for 2 terms, and that was it, Steve. But
Sam Brownback, yeah, he's from Kansas, if I remember correctly, and
yes,
that was great because, I'm going to give you some props real quick. Being the other half of Steve and Steve, you obviously had great patience, but you taught me how to do this, right? So your book, Breaking the Deception Code, was great for learning how to talk to these brilliant people. And, the podcast cookbook,
yes,
what you need to become a successful podcaster, was back in 2017, long before podcasting was a thing. Taught me everything I know. So when I got somebody like that, a senator from a state, I could run with the big boys. I knew what I was doing. So when it came next to Marsha Blackburn or Tim Burchett, who's a congressman, or Ron Johnson we just had from Wisconsin, I'm not nervous. I'm not scared. I'm not tripped. I was more nervous to do the 400th episode and see what you had in store for me than to talk to those guys. So Brownback was a great show, very informative, and like a testing ground. Be like, can I actually talk to these people that are making it happen or not? And can I discern if they're telling me the truth? Because politicians have a tendency not to. So I made sure all my questions were geared towards, the bottom line and the real answer, not what they may have had on a talking point 5 hours earlier on CNN in the morning.
Well, in the format of the show, we've had our fair share of both local politicians for you and national politicians as well, state and federal, and you're anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes with these individuals, and you hold your own. You've done a very, very good job of consistently asking the proper questions and coming back around and getting them, like you said, off their talking points and getting them involved. We had your senator from Tennessee on, and he just says, look, these guys back here, they don't give a flip about you. They're about money. That's about crawling up the ladder, and they're here today, gone tomorrow to get a CEO job with a big pharma company.
That was Tim Burchett, who's a congressman from Tennessee, and he said they're all compromised. They're all compromised. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But, we've got like 80 hours of Republicans. I have that whole thing, that what is a TN, Tennessee Republican. Yes. And I've been putting clips out on X and Instagram with subtitles of all these folks. And ironically enough, they've all gone on to big things. I mean, not only have we had Senator Jack Johnson, who's the majority leader of all the Republicans, and William Lamberth, who's the House side leader of all the Republicans, which in this state, that's everybody. You literally we've had, where was I going with that? So we just had this congressional race that's going on right now. We had 3 of the 5 people who were the frontrunners: Gino Bolso, Jody Barrett, and Stuart Parks. So literally, and that was because of J6. So not even because of that. So all of these people who are like going on to the big stage, this is the theme of the show, started on our little microphone.
That's right.
That's what's cool about it. So, and Jody's been on several times, Gino's been on a couple times, even in the new studio. So we've had this opportunity to get to them before they blew up on the national scene. And one of them is going to win and become the next congressman, and I'll have them on my cell phone.
I think it is kind of phenomenal. I tell people in my book, the Podcaster's Cookbook, that you're not there to make money. Most people do not make money on podcasting, but what they do is
Forgot to tell me that part in the beginning.
Well, it's in there, but the point being is this. I say it is a platform to build bridges and relationships. And Steve, I help other people, and they've done the same thing. And I've looked at what I've done with my podcasting. But Steve, you and spades have leveraged this little platform to build such phenomenal, powerful relationships that you've gotten yourself so involved down there in Tennessee and Tennessee politics and business and arts and entertainment. And I don't think you could have done it without having your platform. I just don't.
I don't either. No, it opened all kinds of doors. I talked about that press pass in Washington State, which gave me access, gave Jonathan access, who deserved it, long before that. They should have just known him by recognizing him. But when I got to Tennessee, I didn't know anybody except for Brandon, who was on the other side of the state in a different time zone, which I had to learn that lesson the hard way, that there's two time zones in Tennessee, Central and Eastern. It's mostly when it was booking and I was like an hour late or an hour early, like, sorry. But yeah, the ability to call Glenn Jacobs, who's the mayor of Knox County, or Marsha Blackburn, who's the U.S. Senator from Tennessee who wants to be governor, or any of the other ones, and have them say, yeah, that means they had to have vetted me, then know like, hey, he's okay, we'll do it. Because if it was a liberal, I've been branded, right? Tennessean, the biggest newspaper in the state, called me a conservative advocacy podcast right out of the gate. And from that moment on, I could forget Heidi Campbell or Justin Jones or Justin Pearson or Gloria Johnson, because they would say, oh, no, not that guy. I'm going to go on the friendly channels. But that's okay, because the good news is, unlike Washington State, the majority of them think like me. They're Republicans. I don't care. It wasn't as hard to get Tamborine Borelli, or sorry, as easy to get Tamborine Borelli out there on the Democratic side, because they won't take any questions. So yeah, It's been fantastic. We started out even on Podomatic, we're number one week after week after week in politics. We've branched out to a lot more than just that category: entertainment, authors, you name it, current events. But we have given ourselves quite the wind in our sails by being conservative advocacy podcast. Thank you very much, Tennessean.
Well, speaking of, I thought we would turn the corner and get a little in the weeds of controversy. Here we go. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today, with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest, Alderperson Gabrielle Hansen. But first, for more information, city in Tennessee and only about
in our community. So I understood what the laws were, and I understood what the culpability would be if we said no, even if they did sue. But the city of Murfreesboro has said no, they did not get sued. Jackson, Tennessee said no, they did not get sued. And at the end of the day, according to a constitutional lawyer who has argued before the United States Supreme Court and won, the worst we would get is a lawsuit that ended up in us negotiating down some legal fees for the plaintiff.
Well, we aren't going to go any further on that, but Steve, tell us.
It does give me a little PTSD with that voice, I must say. Good old Gabriella Hansen, the only show we ever had to take down because she received death threats. But let me tell you a little story I've never told before. So that day, I think, what was that, episode 80?
Yes.
So I've been in Tennessee long enough. I was supposed to have, and we were just talking about our access to our politicians. The Speaker of the House of Tennessee, his name is Cameron Sexton. He was supposed to be episode 80. He was my guest, scheduled and booked. That day, I get a text or call, I forget, can't make it. He had some news breaking, and I understood why he couldn't make it, but he couldn't make it. That had never happened before. So I start calling around with short notice. Hey, who can come on? Who can come on? And so my alder person at the time, who I'd seen at certain dog and pony shows or whatever, Gabrielle Hansen said, "Sure, I'll come on." So she does. And we have a great show. And everything's going fine. We're talking about she hadn't decided to run for mayor yet. Covenant hadn't happened yet. Well, no, it did happen that week.
Yes.
And so we had to ask about that, even though that's not how I wrote it. And it just exploded. And that's when it ended up in the news about her using our content to yell at her, and then she got popular, and then she got railroaded out of town, and it hit the fan, and I got blacklisted with all that, and I had to overcome that. Well, I'm just a guy who asks questions. I didn't know. I didn't do that. What am I supposed to do? Vet her? I was like, she came on the show like 2 minutes before we aired, and we didn't even go live back then, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we weren't. We weren't live. No,
we weren't live. So long story short, that was the worst of times and technically the best of times, because it put me still as Mill Creek View on the map, and then everybody wanted to talk to me. So and the Tennessean, that, you know, I just said that they called me a advocacy conservative advocacy podcast. Not only did they do that, but John Oliver, the comedian, the late night comedy, he called me a podcast. So all of a sudden I go from obscure little local news episode 80 to there's something out there that we need to learn a little bit more. And the calls started coming and the bookings started happening. So God bless it. But man, I wish I didn't have to go through it the way I went through it. I think I also that was the week I got banned from Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So there was a lot going on. That was a lot going on.
Well, and what people don't realize is when we very first began, for quite some time, it was podcast only. There was no visuals. And that transitioned later on when we went to video, but we were podcast strictly. And I would record them. We'd record the show, and then I would upload it after the show onto the different platforms. And
also, when I got to start becoming your biggest pain in the butt, because you literally wrote the book about podcasting, I had said, like, it's time for video, let's go. And you're like,
oh,
ooh,
gosh.
You know, I'm young, but I'm not that young. But we did it.
Let's get this thing up. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. I have missed you all this weekend. Boy, what a week. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest, Matt Murphy. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you did it. Tell us about your coming up in Alabama and your time in radio there.
I had a wonderful opportunity. I had a couple of stints in radio in Georgia, as you mentioned, and I talked too much. I got fired for doing so in Augusta, Georgia, and I was out of radio for a little while and had a chance to hook up with the radio station in Montgomery through a mutual friend who was programming a news talk station, and I'd not really considered news talk to be an option. I was in my mid-20s, so it wasn't on my radar screen.
So talk to us about how that opened up some new bridges for you, some new doorways.
Matt Murphy, yep, that's another one. We used to do Murphy's Law once a month, and then he got too busy, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I mean, what can I say about that guy? What started out as him using my show with Gabrielle while filling in for the largest talk show in Nashville. It wasn't his show, it was Brian Williams' show. The Drive Home, everybody knows him, he's famous. He has since retired, and now Matt actually has his show with a huge audience, still has me on. So while all the Republicans fight each other and pick sides like school kids, Matt's been very nice to stick with me even after all that. And my first week in town, I went on this other show that's not on air anymore, Tennessee Star, and that guy's never had me back because he chose sides of the rhinos, but not Matt. I see him at John Rich's house and events and debates with AFP Tennessee. We joke on X, so his followers have become my followers. So he's pretty much made my name in this town as what the Tennessean, like I said, call me. Conservative Advocacy podcast. We get to joke because he's a libertarian. But again, better than John Oliver just calling me a podcast, but still using our copyrighted content. And so that helps get the word out to us, and we became, what we are so far. There's more to come, but here's a fun thing. So I got a call from a veterans group that had heard my show and saying that a World War II veteran was going to be buried at the Nashville Military Cemetery and had no family. So he's going to basically be buried alone. That was so sad. So I called Matt, John Rich, and Kid Rock, and we get like 300, maybe 400 people to show up. So the brother and sister-in-law in their 90s, they were just in awe of what we were able to do on a short notice. So we did a good thing that day, and we made the local news. That felt good. So thanks, Matt, John, and Kid. His real name is Robert. So that was a huge day, and knowing Matt made that happen. So that was awesome.
Well, here's our next one, another trend setting. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest, Riley Gaines. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe.
When I was 4,
and help protect America's daughters. Riley, welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you so much. The intro made me seem a lot cooler than I really am. So I appreciate that.
No, I've seen you speak live. You're pretty darn cool. Well, thanks for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. It was short notice. And we are dedicated to this show to lovers of truth. And I can't think of a better guest today to highlight than you. So let's start at the beginning. There are a lot of sports to choose from. As a little girl growing up in Gallatin, your dad played football for Vandy and your mom softball at Donaldson Christian Academy.
So let's talk about Riley Gaines and even the underlying theme behind that show with your daughter in your whole move to Tennessee.
Yeah, so Riley Gaines, what a wonderful woman. In the era of, everybody shut your mouth, be quiet, sit down, don't say anything, just let this culture roll over you. Who, had I not moved to Tennessee when I did, the day I did, she's from here too. I said, Gallatin, I may not have met her. So early in her rise to fame, she was just on Pierce Morgan, and a black woman yelled at her something like, "How can I be racist to you? I'm black. I can't be racist," which again, it's bizarro world. So I met her for a pro-woman event here in my town at the Harley-Davidson Moonshine dealership, it's called, like the only place that would do it when she was still dealing with the NCAA stuff against men swimming in girls' lanes in college. Same thing my little daughter dealt with in Seattle. And why we left. We had a lot in common, Riley and I. I still post our picture together on X sometimes when they come after her. Good woman. So all I can say. She had her first baby girl. So mazel tov,
wow.
Congratulations. She's been married now, and she's been out there with Senator Marsha Blackburn, maybe Tennessee's next governor for pro-women laws. And she got the Lake and Riley Act passed in Georgia. And in February, just a few months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, Trump signed an executive order banning transgender women and girls from competing in women's sports by threatening to deny federal funds to schools that do not comply. So we knew her early, right? She's still winning, and nobody knew who she was when they hadn't yet. And now she's been with Turning Point USA, got involved with Charlie Kirk, and she just exploded onto the national scene and actually doing good, making a positive change in our community, as we say in every intro. So she's like the epitome of what we did, and on to bigger and better things.
Well, our next guest is somebody who also is into that world and who is trying to do her best to sound the alarm, and here we go. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
And welcome back to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest Joey Bright. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View, Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe. And welcome to our People in News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with Joey Bright. On August 8th, 2020, Joey Bright, a patriot and American, held the Can I Get a Witness conference. It was dedicated to the memory of Magdalene Burns and featured many prominent pro-women activists. Magdalene Burns was a British children's activist born May 8th, 1983 in London. Hello, Joey. How are you today?
Hey, that beginning music, I mean, I started like rocking out. I was so good. Are we going to hear this for a while? So, well,
it does make it hard for me to make my cues every time. Yes, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. So, gonna be honest, not my usual subject matter for this show, but I'm a big boy now, so I think I can handle it. And more importantly, I know my listeners can. So let me just start right here. Tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to all of this activity in the recent history of you.
Well, I'm a native Californian. I've been a liberal Democrat, voting that way my whole life.
So, do you remember that interview?
So that's the interview. I made it to 89 episodes, almost 90, without anyone yelling at me. I was very particular in my intros so that I could, because we used to do the intros all the time when they were listening. They were there. It wasn't like preset and then edited in. And she yelled at me. So Joey Bright, that one started off rough, but we got to be actually good friends. She's helped me a lot subsequently with other shows with guests about transgender issues and gay issues and things like that, just so I would get the language right, because the first take on the intro, she was triggered because I forget now, I expunged my brain from using words like that because I don't anymore. So because of her, so we almost didn't have that show. I had to talk her back in to say like, hey, come on now. I didn't mean to insult. I really want to have this. So when you heard that intro there and she's all happy about the rock and roll music that we played and stuff, that's not how it started out, but you know, the show must go on. So yeah, I learned a valuable lesson from her, and she's been so sweet and so great ever since, because, you know, California is a big issue with us, transgenderism, wokeness on campuses, including entertainment. She is the one who gave me that guy Whistle, who we had on with that anti-transgender music. So yeah, just a lemon into lemonade, as they say. It could have gone a whole nother route. We never would have had episode 89, and it would have been somebody else.
Well, and I love the fact that I do remember that. And as I said, we were not live in those days, so we were able to save it. We had another interview with somebody else that was pretty hostile, and then it was like 15 minutes into it. Oh, you're not hostile to me. Okay. And it became a really great show. But
that was Ivan Reichman the first time.
Yes.
He came back twice. He came back a second time. He's like, you really want some more? And I'm like, well, now you know I'm not against you. I want to hear it from you. Yeah, that was fun. That was actually this one, Joey prepared me for such a thing as that. So when he started attacking me live, I didn't really care. I know how to get through this, and we will, and we did, and we pulled off the show, as opposed to like, okay, cut, we're gonna start over again.
No, nobody left the show. Neither party left the show, and you were able to save it. And Steve, it tells you that your agenda was all along, and as has been, I'm just interviewing people. I just want to hear your story. Totally. Tell me about your life. Tell me about what you're involved. I don't have an axe to grind. I'm not here to do a chop job on you. And then people like warm up very quickly and go, gee, it's just a conversation. And thank you for giving me a podium to come on and share.
And I have had Democrats on, believe it or not.
Yes,
I had the one from Memphis who was the former Congressman, John DeBerry, and I had the guy Smith, who was the guy who was proving that the counting was fractional. And these are Democrats, and once the word gets out that he's fair, he's not going to go after you. I mean, he's not a debate show. He's not Crossfire from the 80s. We might get some Democrats to come on. Who knows?
Well, here's another one, that kind of picks up right on. As a matter of fact, it may have been because of Joey, we got this guest. Welcome to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Hello, y'all, and welcome back to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today, with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest, Chloe Cole. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View, Tennessee. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with Chloe Cole. Chloe is a young activist who opposes gender-affirming care for minors and supports bans on such care following her own detransition. She began transitioning at 12 and detransitioned at 17 after having undergone treatment, which includes puberty blockers, testosterone, and a double mastectomy. In May 2022, Cole testified in support of Ohio House Bill 454, which would ban gender-affirming care for minors. Cole testified in favor of an eventually passed Florida bill that denied Medicaid coverage for procedures that alter primary or secondary sexual characteristics for both adults and children. Cole testified against a bill introduced by Senator Scott Wiener to make California a sanctuary state for children seeking gender-affirming care. She filed a 90-day notice of intent to sue against the healthcare company Kaiser Permanente, along with the individual endocrinologist, psychiatrist, and plastic surgeon involved in her treatment. Chloe, I'm so excited to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're back in Tennessee, best place on earth. What's going on for you here this week?
Not much. I have quite a few friends over here, and I just wanted to visit them for the time being before
Excellent.
I move on to the next trip.
I bet they're great people. All right.
So, boy, I think, Steve, I just want to say that was one of the few shows I cried. I cried.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. I've only cried twice. Once for that one and a Christmas show we did with Rodney Atkins and his wife when they sang to us. But that one, yeah, Chloe Cole, another on to great things to help people that no one had heard of or no one would talk to, especially, detransitioners were hated. That's sort of like the enemy to the far left. And so Joey Bright, I actually talked to ahead of time and said, hey, I want to handle this correctly. She's just a kid. How do I not get her mad at me like you? And that's how we had a wonderful conversation. I don't know if you know this. I was just reading up on her. Steve, do you remember we had a hand in this at the end of the show? She said she views her experience with gender transition and detransition as a spiritual awakening, finding faith in Jesus and a new identity in Christ. She said, I'd always felt like there was something that was just different about me. What ended up filling the void of Christ was transgender ideology. While readjusting to life as her true self, Cole came to faith in Christ. You did that, don't you think? I mean, at the end of the show, you literally asked her, do you know Jesus? And she was like, what? But here we are now, 3 years later. That's you, brother.
Wow. I remember that. She says, I'm looking into that. I remember her saying that she was just just starting down that road. And that, I asked her, and we had a very frank and soft conversation about that. But God, the Holy Spirit moved me. I couldn't help it. And
yeah, well, there's a reason. And maybe that is the end result. I mean, she's had the ability to have states. She's spoken before states. She's very articulate. Who are banning puberty blockers, and they're outlawing federal funds for these type of things, and children's hospitals are being shut, and Planned Parenthood's not allowed to give these puberty blockers out anymore. So like she's literally talking about making a positive change in our community, but also with the spirit now of the Lord, who knows that she was made perfect, and now she knows that too. And
amen.
I'd like to think that our little show had a little something to do with that. So especially since I got to listen to you talk to her about that, and you don't even pipe in that often, so you can probably go back and find it. I'm pretty sure it was on air. But anyway, God bless her, and that was a sensitive, very special show. I'm glad we did it.
It was.
And I see her on TV all the time. And I'm like, I remember her when she was just a little girl out of California who Kaiser treated really badly.
Her demeanor has totally changed. You could tell that she was just this little girl lost, that she was now being tossed into the limelight. And I think I told her about that too. But the point being is she is now being used by God in a mighty way to transform the way things are and in a positive, God honoring way. So speaking of transformation, let's move on to this next couple of individuals. Welcome to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person or people making positive change in our community. This time, special guests Rodney Atkins and Rose Falcon. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe. It is totally free to you for now. Welcome to our People in News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking to Rodney and Rose. Rose Falcon is the daughter of singer-songwriter, guitarist, producer Billy Falcon and Mila Falcon. Her early years were spent in a studio apartment in New York City. Though the family moved to New Jersey when she was old enough to attend school, her mother was diagnosed with cancer in 1987 and died 2 years later, but after which she was raised by her father, with whom she traveled around the country as part of his music career. They eventually settled in Nashville. Billy Falcon encouraged his daughter to sing, and when she asked, he began to collaborate with her on her songwriting. She was signed by Columbia Records and released her debut album, Rose Falcon, in March 2003 when she was 19. Rodney Allen Atkins, born in Knoxville, Tennessee on March 28, 1969, racked up a series of country chart toppers starting in 2006 with If You're Going Through Hell Before the Devil Even Knows, a song that helped him snag top new male vocalist from the Academy of Country Music. Between 2006 and 2008, he racked up 5 #1 country hits, highlighted by the seminal smash Watching You. I've actually met their buckaroo. Together, they are Rod and Rose. CountrySwag.com said on their first EP as a duo, Rod and Rose reveal a collection of heartfelt tracks that are sure to melt even the coldest of hearts. Their connection is palpable through their harmonies, and if they ain't love, we don't know what is. But most importantly, they are scout and riders, mommy and daddy. We are truly blessed to have them today on the MCV, and if I'm nice, they're going to sing for us later. Rose and Rod, Rod and Rose, I'm thrilled to have you on the MCV today. How are you holding up with Christmas for the boys? Only 5 days, 120 hours away.
5 days. It's like 4 days, isn't it?
We're having fun, man.
We're having fun, but Rodney alerted me last night that Christmas is on Monday, and I had no idea because I just don't feel like Christmas should be on a Monday. I feel like it's like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday holiday. You know what I mean?
It would be best, yeah. It would be best,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, let's start a movement to move Chris. Yeah.
Tell us how you came up with it, and then I'll shut up and let you do your thing.
I'm going to get the guitar, so I'll talk for a second.
Okay.
So we wrote this song with our buddy Brandon Hood, and Brandon produced it. It's called Mary Had a Little Lamb. And when we were trying to write it, it's about the birth of Christ, and we consider that, the most important thing in our lives, but also the most important thing at Christmas. And it was hard to write because there's just not a lot of information about the birth of Christ. And it's one of my favorite songs I've ever been a part of. And we performed it on Fox and Friends. And I think that was our first time performing it live. And it was in New York. The tree had just gotten burnt down, like their Christmas tree that they had out there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So they had us perform outside in front of that tree. And I knew that when we performed it, I was nervous, and I was like, I think that went well. And so that was it. We left, and we're just standing in Times Square, and I get a call from our manager at the time, and he said, how does it feel to have the #1 song in the country? And it had gone to #1 on iTunes, and it sat there above the Mariah Carey All I Want for Christmas, which just does not move on that chart for the holiday season. And it was there for a good while, and we were just blown away, by the fans and the people out there that connected with this song. I mean, that was one of the coolest moments that I can remember, is just being in Times Square and knowing that something we did together had an impact.
It's crazy. I know folks think, well, you guys are professional. You put music out all the time, and you got the labels promoting it and all that. Not necessarily. No, there was no promotion. There was nothing about that. We were just praying that folks could hear it and be blessed by the song. There was nothing. And it just happened that we played the song, and the people, I know the reason I get to do this for a living is it's the people in the real world out there. That was an amazing experience for that.
Yeah.
All right, lay it on us.
All right, let me get my guitar.
Those guitars
So
have
we're
names?
live, huh? We're live.
They match. Do those guitars have names?
Oh, not yet. This one's new. Is
Okay.
yours?
Be great. It'll be great. Go for it.
I can try to change it. All
We
right.
didn't switch it back.
It does say original sound for musicians.
Nothing but hate for a bit.
I may need to change that. There, now it's on. Tell me
I
if
think
it
it
sounds
does it
weird.
when
We'll
you
just
start
do a little
playing.
test here.
That turns on and off.
Good? All right, cool.
There was no room, only a manger. Nothing but hay for a bed. It's where she laid down his head. No sleigh bells ringing, no decorations. Just a mother and child, so tender and mild. That holy night in Bethlehem, all the angels sang. Mary had a little lamb, and Jesus was his name.
Wow.
That was a special one. That was a Christmas special. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repeat that one, but yeah, that was pretty cool. And I have met Scout and Ryder, their kids, because another guest of ours, Billy Falcon, is her dad, and he wrote I think 90 songs for John Bon Jovi, and so we had him on, and he also sang, and he introduced me to his daughter, who's married to Rodney, and so we living in Nashville, and you just can't rub two sticks together without coming across somebody who's a hit maker. So that was a blessing. That was really awesome.
Yeah, we at the end of that show, we were both pretty teary-eyed on that one.
Yeah, it was sweet. That was very sweet.
So here's another.
I forgot that it went to number one. That's cool. I'm glad we got to revisit that, because I remember her doing it and him doing it, but I didn't remember number one, and that's cool.
Well, here's another one. Here was a very, very fun one, and I think we both thoroughly enjoyed it. Here we go. Let's get this going.
Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast, and happy Halloween, or All Saints Day, or All Hallows Tide if you prefer. We are back always with an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, very, very special guest, John Schneider. But first, to subscribe to the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcast at Mill Creek View Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe. It's totally free to you. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with John Schneider, a.k.a. Jonathan Kent, a.k.a. Bo Duke. John has enjoyed a successful career in country music, topping charts with his #1 hits, I've Been Around Enough to Know, and You're the Last Thing I Needed Tonight. From 1984 to 1987, Schneider released 6 albums, including his #1 album, A Memory Like You, and a Greatest Hits album. Schneider then took time off to pursue his acting opportunities, but would return with Worth the Wait in 1996. He's gone on to release 2 Christmas albums, including Home for Christmas with Dukes of Hazzard co-star beer can, claiming he was in his mid-20s as the role called for. Show ran from 1979 to 1985 when young Schneidi was 18 years old through 25. I was 8 to 14 and never missed a Friday. 4 kids: Leah Michelle Castle, Project Runway, All Stars, camera woman; Chasen Joseph, actor, Secret Life of American Teenager; and Karish Schneider, active duty firefighter and played Danielle in Collier and Company; and Mandy, and now he's on the Mill Creek View podcast with me. John, how are you today?
My God, that was wonderful. I have to mention one more beautiful child from my lovely wife Alicia and I. Her daughter, my daughter now, is Jessica Turner, who's going to give me a grandson.
Oh boy!
In March, yeah,
a new role.
March. Karis gave us a granddaughter, so we're gonna have a grandson in March, and it's just wonderful. My God, you've done your research. Thank you.
40 years. John Schneider, that was special. Like Kirk Cameron, watching Bo Duke jump creeks, and then all that joy that he gave me, and then talk to him. Sadly, a few months after his wife had died, we went down his family list there, and it was on Halloween, like we said, and the doorbell was ringing, and Sweet Caroline was barking, for trick-or-treaters, and we made him laugh. He said at the end that he had fun with a big smile, and he'd been so down in the dumps, and I think she may have died in May or June, and this year was October, so it was recent memory, of course. And they were such business partners. Like, she was his executive producer, and so we made a depressed guy who was a TV star happy, and that was cool for me. And by the way, we were in video by then. I think Chloe,
yes, we are.
Rod and Rose and John Schneider. So there is video of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if my technology was better, I would have showed it. But he was sitting there with us back when we were doing split screen, Steve's, like we're doing right now, and he was sitting there just laughing as we were getting the music going, and as you were going on with your monologue about him, he was laughing over there quietly, just enjoying having you talk well about him. But yeah, John, what an individual, and yes, you're exactly right. I think we brought a lot of pleasure to his life in a very down time, very down.
And I was certainly fanboying on him. I kind of listened back on that and go like, dude, chill out. But I was pretty excited.
I think people enjoy that. And then you had a great discussion and went a lot of different directions, and actually said, man, that was fun. And I got that clip and kept it, and I run it sometimes as one of our in-between things on our show, our shout-outs. But yeah, but speaking of childhood heroes on TV, let's switch gears and go to this guy.
Community, this time very special guest, Kevin Sorbo, the one and only. But first, for more information about the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View, Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe. It's totally free to you. Welcome to our People in News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with actor, producer, author, and director Kevin Sorbo. Famous for his role on the #1 worldwide hit TV series Hercules: The Legendary Journeys, Kevin always strived to bring hopeful messages and meaningful entertainment to all. After Hollywood's wokeness spread wide, Kevin forged his own path. Already a successful actor, director, and producer, he founded Sorbo Studios to breathe traditional values and uplifting content back into the fabric of American culture. As an author, producer, and mentor, Kevin is dedicated to creating stories that inspire and nurture the soul. He wrote The Test of Lionhood, a Christian children's book that teaches kids about masculinity. So check that out for your favorite kids' Christmas stockings. There's only 20 days left, people. Kevin Sorbo is happily married to his bride of over 25 years, Sam Sorbo, and they have 3 nearly grown children. I think they are grown now, who they homeschooled: Braden, Octavia, and Shane, born 12 pounds, 6 ounces. Wow. Born nearly full grown. Turns 20 in a few months. Hello, Mr. Sorbo. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You're in Florida, right? Where it's always sunshine.
It's beautiful here. Yeah, we escaped the worst governor in the country for the best governor in the country. So we love being here. We left 5 years ago, and both my wife and I have had family out here for a long time. I think our sisters lived out here 40 years. So we've been coming for years, and it just got to a point. I got so fed up with California, with what they've done to the state. As you know, that whole left coast is insane. And we left, and it's been a great move for me. I mean, I've shot over 80 movies, and probably 90% of those movies are shot in Texas or further east. Nothing shoots in California anymore.
Oh, there you go. So talk to us about that guy.
Kevin Sorbo. He's the whole reason for this whole movie producer thing that I started doing. I was the host of 3 hour-long panels just this weekend at the Christian Film Festival here in Nashville called Gideon, with some real home run hitters that I met after Kevin, wanted to do my movie. So all of a sudden, people looked at me as a producer. So, kind of a blessing and a curse. Nick Searcy from Justified, Lucas Foster produced Ford versus Ferrari, big time producer. The Jesus Revolution and House of David team from Kingdom Story all came to these panels because I asked them, because they'd been on my show and they knew that I was okay. And so had it not been for Kevin, when you go to my IMDb page, which, believe it or not, I have one, with all of these guests, Jameson Newlander, and we talked about Martha Byrne, and we talked about Jennifer O'Neill. They're all there. Kevin, or Nick Searcy, Kevin Sorbo, John Schneider, Kirk Cameron. People will say, oh, okay, if they've done it, I'll do it. So Kevin was the early on, John was, they were really close together. Let me see here, 143 and 199. All right, so 50 shows later, but we used to do like 4 or 5 a week, so it wasn't really that long between them. We dropped down over time because I couldn't handle the pace. But yeah, that's the guy. He had his Hercules sword behind him on video, and he talked all about his past career and his present and his future. And the guy is international superstar. So that was fun.
Well, let's shift gear to somebody that you've become very well acquainted with, and here we go.
Is the Heartland Journal's Tennessee podcast. Welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. Tell your friends. We focus on the volunteer state and our nation today, with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Welcome to HLJ's People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with special guest Michael Yaffe, not just in the news, reporter of news. Growing up in Orlando, Florida, Yaffe got his start in radio by graduating from the University of Central Florida with a degree in radio TV. Go Citronauts. With the dream of getting into talk radio, he began as an intern for Good Morning Orlando on News Radio WFLA Orlando in 2010, and was hired by the station later that same year. Soon after that, Yaffe worked his way up and became the executive producer and co-host of the show, along with hosting other shows like the Florida Roundtable, Beyond Reason Radio, and PM Orlando. Yaffe is always the voice of reason when it comes to news, politics, and culture, sounds familiar, and brought his Christian conservative voice to WVNN before WFLA Orlando. This was a tweet on his Facebook page. She wrote, "I am right now in the process of fulfilling my dream of being a conservative talk radio host. Married to Stephanie." You can catch him on the Yaffe program, 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time on WVNN in Huntsville, Yaffe Live, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Talk Radio 102.3 in Chattanooga, news writer for YellowhammerNews.com, Huntsville's and Chattanooga's voice of reason. Let's find out for ourselves. Hello, Michael. How are you today?
Good. Is that still on my Facebook page? I'm fulfilling my dream. I still up there, huh?
Still dreaming this, apparently. Yeah,
Nice.
That's where I got it. You might want to change that and say live in the dream. I don't know. It's up to you.
I guess so, yeah. How's it going?
So that was April of 2024, Steve. Talk to us about how that opened up a new direction for you.
Yeah, so he, invited him on because he's a radio personality, and we did a show all about him. And then he called me and said, "Hey, how would you like to come on once a week on Wednesdays and be on air live in Huntsville, Alabama, and Chattanooga, Tennessee?" And I said, "Okay, sure. I got the content anyway. Let's do it." So I don't think I've missed a week since. I tack them on the end of the shows, which is nice, a little bonus if you stick around and listen on your podcast. Only on the podcast, not on the Rumble. And we've had some great time. I call it on Twitter Stephen Michaels or Stephen at Yaffe Save the World. And then some little joke about, whatever it is we're talking about, Middle East peace or Trump and his Nobel Prize or whatever it's going to be. And it's been really fun. And then he went on vacation and I filled in for his entire 3-hour show, which I had never done before, live, and had some great guests that have been on the show in the past. Everyone from Jack Johnson to Porter Martin, who did the song The Cowboy for the Reagan movie, and everywhere in between. And we kind of fought the TVA methane gas plant on air together live and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, hasn't invited me back yet. No, he hasn't been on vacation since, but yeah, it's been fun. And the Matt Murphy live appearances was good practice, and filling in for Brandon for his show was nice too, but there's nothing like you're live in studio on a radio show with commercial breaks, and you're watching the clock, and you're creating content, and you're trying to be cool and not be an idiot. Don't know if I succeeded at that, but that was did we ever play that? Did we post?
Yeah, that
okay, so it is out there. The whole
Yep.
show is out there. Okay, so there you go. You can go judge for yourself if I did a good job. But at the very end of it, his producer Max said, "You done good." And so coming from a guy like that, salt of the earth, Eastern Tennessee, and radio for a long, long time, I'll say, okay, I did good. I'll take it as a compliment.
Well, that's good. And so let's shift gears and get back into Hollywood for a moment, because you got some pretty big hitters on the show, and here's one of them.
Welcome to the Heartland Journals podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowicz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with very special guest, Ralph Winters. I'm hoping you learned things today you didn't know about the movie business and culture, which for my whole life was dominated by Mr. Winter. But first, I want to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how we grow and keep this content free for you. And if you like what you hear, share it.
Hitler has captured the nation's imagination, Dietrich.
Bravery is a rare commodity. You will go to England as our spy.
What good is the church if it doesn't speak for the victims of the state?
The church's job is to kindle peace, peacefully.
Oh, you mean silently? I need you to understand.
You or your home at all?
No, we're far away. We're far away from that. Thank you for asking. We do live in the foothills, but yeah, that's all spread out here in Los Angeles. And yeah, that danger is real for a lot of people. And we live in a scrubby, dry area, and those winds kick up, and yeah, but we're safe. Thank you.
You're good. Well, God bless. It's kind of the sixth season, right? You got winter, spring, summer, fall, mudslides, and fires. So it's just normal.
Yeah.
So that is none other than Ralph Winter. Talk to us about that.
The interesting thing about Ralph Winter is I reached out to him because I'm a big fan of, the Marvel comic book movies and comic books when I was younger. And so he's the one who produced all the X-Men, a lot of them that you've seen, discovered Ryan Reynolds, and the Star Trek movies, the older ones with Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. Created, Save the Whales and all that kind of thing. And so I invited him for that. But subsequently, he became the guy who now does and he told us this on the show that he was about to do this. He's the guy who does the internal programming of the Sphere in Vegas, the big round thing where they have the eyeball and the Camilla Harris and all that stuff on the outside. He didn't do that, but on the inside he does. And so they had the Eagles there. They had U2 perform there. Vince Gill ended up being one of the Eagles. And now they have the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere, okay? And so he achieved huge box office success, selling over, and I wrote this in my notes this morning, 500,000 tickets, and generated over $65 million in revenue since its launch in late August 2025. So it's only been a couple months. This success is for an immersive 4D experience of the 1939 film, which features a newly recorded score and enhanced visuals and sound design for the Sphere's unique technology. Basically, Kids today that saw that garbage Wicked get to see the original like never before. Like I've never seen it. You've never seen it. Luckily, and thanks to Ralph. So I just sent him a congratulations email before the show. You know, so I'm glad you picked him up. He wrote me back and he said, and here, I'm going to read it to you. Opened August 28th, and we are approaching 1 million in ticket sales. So actually double that, $130 million. That's like, I don't even think Mission Impossible 10 did that. So that, here you go, this genius that we had on when he was almost a retired producer, let's just say, coming out and actually changing the world in movie-going experiences. So how cool is that?
That is phenomenal, Steve. Wow. Wow. And the fact that you have, this is something I learned when I had my show. You build a relationship, even a one-time interview, you have their email, and if you did a good job and you contact them again, just like you said, hey, I just want to say thank you, congratulations. He was kind enough to come back and say, hey, here's what we did. Thank you for being interested. That's a phenomenal thing, Steve. That is so wonderful.
The guy who invented Deadpool. So there you go. Do we have any more, or is that the end?
Yeah, I got a couple more, and then we'll sign off with your. We'll get to the point where you can do your sign off. So here's another one.
Oh, welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowicz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. After you're done here, please hit the subscribe button and then hop over to heartlandjournal.com, and you can see our entire library of shows, over 300 episodes and counting, and our contributor columns under the tab we call Journal Entries. Some amazing stuff getting picked up nationally, and I really, really hope you like it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth, even the funny truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Brad Stein. For over 20 years, Brad Stein, God's Comic, has been by far the most unique Christian comic in the country. So imagine my surprise when yesterday he interviewed on his hit show, Brad Stein Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity, my Heartland Journal blogger, Gigi Butler. The New Yorker magazine dubbed him God's Comic, by the way, like the Tennessean called me a conservative advocacy podcast. That stuff sticks. So he had on Gigi, and now I have on Brad. Good trade. Brad, how are you today?
You know what? I'm doing pretty darn good. I wasn't earlier. And then I found out I was going to be in your podcast. And I said, that's what I've been waiting for. Because I remember so often, people would call in 60 Minutes numerous times. Please come on. NBC News constantly asking me, please, will you be a talking head? We need someone. I said, look, if I can't get on the Heartland Journal podcast, what's the point of it all? And they're all like, I get that. And so for me to finally have broken through that glass ceiling, it's life-changing for me. So yeah, I can finally die happy. So thank you for what you've done for me today.
You are too kind. The check is in. That guy, he for 20 years, he has been a very, very special Christian comedian. He had his special coming out, Laugh While It's Legal, taking obviously the tact of the right, that the left is, trying to crush the humor out of everything good is that's funny, they don't allow. And so that was cute that you picked the right one to clip. So especially since you played so many of my intros, for you to let him push back at me with some humor on the intros, that's great. I loved it.
Yeah, I went, oh, this is going to be a great show. I started laughing right off the bat. Here we go. Here's another one that kind of again, you never got away from that controversial stuff. And here's another one of our great shows.
Welcome to the Heartland Journals podcast with your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowicz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help, and thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. All right, folks, you've heard me say it 316 times now. lovers of truth. You won't get more truth than what we're about to hear. Today we are talking with special guest Dr. Bryan Ardis. Dr. Ardis is one of the world's most influential voices in alternative medicine. He's a crusader for truth and justice in healthcare and has become a beacon of hope for those seeking natural healing in a world often dominated by controversial treatments and policies. In his groundbreaking best-selling book, Moving Beyond the COVID-19 Lies, Restoring Health and Hope for Humanity, Dr. Ardis exposes decades of hidden agendas by the U.S. government and the pharmaceutical industry. On his weekly podcast, The Dr. Ardis Show, shares his latest research and insight and fearlessly advocates for those whose voices have been silenced by the medical establishment. As co-founder of the Transformative Wellness Conference Healing for the Ages, AGES, Dr. Ardis has taken his message of healing and hope to millions around the world. Dr. Ardis has been a headline speaker on the Reawaken America tour and appeared in multiple documentaries, including Watch the Water 1 and 2, Antidote, and the Covenom 19 series. Dr. Ardis lives in Texas with his wife, Jane. They're not 1, not 2, not 3, but 8 children, as well as several grandchildren. Hello, Dr. Ardis. How are you today?
It's great to be here, Steve. Enjoying your podcast here. Very excited to be a part of Heartland Journal podcast today.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So you didn't shy it away, and it even got you. Well, how did when you dealt with artists and a few others on your show, how did that end up for you?
Oh, it was good, actually. I mean, we had Dr. Tenpenny, McCullough, we had Malone, 2 of Joe Rogan's top performing guests ever. We had Dr. Ruby. We had a lot of doctors who fit the bill, like artists, who I think you use in our opening montage. They are the epitome of what we were trying to do. They were being silenced. They knew better. They've been in the business a long time of health and medicine and wellness and alternative medicine. And so we opened our doors and ears and said, come on and tell us exactly what they're telling us out of the CDC and the NIH and the rest. And Dr. Fauci, which I just learned, by the way, is an Italian word for sickle, as in Reaper, Grim Reaper, sickle. So having them on and being able to speak was the exact alternative of what Dr. TV, Dr. CNN was allowing people to do, where you would have the people who would say the opposite because of their advertising. We don't advertise. So, yeah, I'm proud to say we've had some of the most canceled doctors who were right? I mean, if they were wrong, I'd feel bad about it. I'd be like, oh, good, they should have been canceled. They were liars. They were cheaters. They were selling snake oil. But everything from alternative medicine like Scott Jansen and John Jubilee to him and Dr. Tenpenny, or the gal who wrote the book Turtles All the Way Down.
Oh, yeah.
Literally exposed. That was up until recently, that was one of my biggest shows ever, because that book is literally published. You can go get it, Library of Congress, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere you want, Turtles All the Way Down. And it exposed that the vaccine industry has never done a side-by-side placebo safe and effective test. And so they keep pumping these kids full of this stuff, and no one was talking about it. And so we did. And so how did it affect me personally? Nothing. It just allowed some doctors to say, oh, you've had Malone on? I'll come on. Because they knew that if I hadn't, then I was going to give him a hard time and try to make him out to be a quack and whatever. So, and we got him. So, and these are big influencers. The word influencer has become quite important these days because they are the alternative to the reality that they tried to create in medicine. And I always said, I told my kids this back in the COVID days, when you make medicine a Democrat versus Republican thing, it doesn't end well. And so these doctors weren't looking at politics. They weren't even looking at profit motives. Some of them were destroyed.
Yes.
We brought them on so they could be the town criers, the Paul Revere's, like I try to be about don't California my Tennessee. Don't bring your politics here and change this great state that's already conservative like they did in Washington state. So long story short, I believe that we did something that not a lot of other podcasters would do, and that is bring on the alternative doctors. And they were just the alternative to the narrative. They were actually on the right side of history.
Well, Steve, this has been wonderful, and we're going to move into your final segment, which is your commentary. But man, 400.
Thanks again
episode.
for Steve, producer, for making this a very special 400th episode. Not just because I didn't have to kill myself booking a guest. You did all the work for me, but I really just want to thank you for all that we've been through. So hang on, folks. I'll be right back.
If country ain't country, then this ain't gonna work. Oh, there ain't no gold in this new Nashville dirt.
Thanks for coming back. Please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. Email address is all we ask, and never miss a new show as we work our way to 500 if it doesn't kill me. And it's still free. Now, the Heartland Journal news. We've had a lot of reporters and White House correspondents on this show. So in honor of another past guest, instead of reading my own today, I hope you, I want to give you Tyler O'Neill from Daily Signal. CNN didn't tell you this, so it fits the theme. The organization that put Charlie Kirk's organization on a hate map with chapters of the Ku Klux Klan ahead of his assassination last week also had a long history of carrying water for the violent Antifa movement that President Donald Trump has targeted for investigation, thanks to some of our guests that we've had on, as we said. Tyler Robinson, 22, who faces murder charges in the assassination of Kirk, had reportedly adopted leftist political positions and endorsed the transgender movement, according to authorities. His bullets casings reportedly included anti-fascist messaging resonant of Antifa. Trump announced Wednesday night that he would be designating Antifa a terrorist organization. Antifa agitators brand their opponents as akin to Nazis, identifying themselves as anti-fascist. These agitators reportedly embed themselves in more mainstream protests, break away to engage in violence, and occasionally return to the safety of the crowd later. While the movement is largely disconnected, it sometimes forms organizations like Rose City Antifa in Portland. Antifa agitators have engaged in violence for years, most notably in the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. The riots that grew out of those protests caused an estimated $2 billion in damage, measured by insurance payouts, and took the lives of 26 Americans, notably including Black people like 77-year-old retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn. The Southern Poverty Law Center, a public interest law firm that gains its reputation by suing Ku Klux Klan chapters into bankruptcy and presents itself as America's premier hate watchdog, has steadfastly refused to put any Antifa organizations on its hate map. Meanwhile, the SPLC puts mainstream conservatives and Christian groups on the map, calling them part of the infrastructure upholding white supremacy. A terrorist used the map to target the Conservative Christian Family Research Council in 2012, and the man who opened fire at a congressional baseball game practice in 2017 had liked the SPLC on Facebook. The SPLC condemned these attacks. This summer, the SPLC added Kirk's Turning Point USA to the hate map. It remains unclear whether this may have inspired Robinson and the SPLC condemned the assassination, but it has not removed Turning Point from the map. The SPLC has refused to add Antifa, Black Lives Matter, or vandals targeting churches and pro-life pregnancy centers to the hate map. Richard Cohen, who resigned as SPLC president amid a racial discrimination and sexual harassment scandal in 2019, how apropos, did offer a rare explicit condemnation of Antifa violence in 2017. We oppose these groups and what they are trying to do, Cohen said. Who are they and what are they trying to do? We think they are contributing to the problem we are seeing, he added. We think it's likely to lead to other forms of retaliation. In Berkeley, Antifa showed up and shut down speeches. The next time the white supremacists brought the Oath Keepers with them, they brought their own army. Yet he said SPLC wouldn't label Antifa a hate group because it does not discriminate people on the basis of race, sexual orientation, or other classes protected by anti-discrimination laws, just conservatives. There might be forms of hate out there that you may consider hateful, but it's not the type of hate we follow, Cohen said. Not all hate is equal. Carrying water for Antifa. In 2023, however, the SPLC added anti-government extremist groups to the hate map, including parental rights organizations such as Moms for Liberty, we've had on. Antifa remains absent. In June of 2020, the SPLC attacked then-President Trump for announcing his intention to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. It warned that those who identified with the Antifa label represent a large spectrum of the political left and that far-right extremists use similar tactics to the Trump administration in condemning Antifa. The SPLC condemned Trump's move as unprecedented and alarming and minimized Antifa violence as skirmishes and property crimes, adding that the threat of lethal violence pales in comparison to that posed by far-right extremists. In 2023, authorities arrested an SPLC lawyer, charging him with domestic terrorism for his alleged role in an Antifa riot involving Molotov cocktails. The lawyer is one of 61 defendants who are represented by many attorneys. The case remains ongoing, and prosecutors expect a ruling from the judge soon. Megan Squire, whom Wired magazine profiled as Antifa's secret weapon against far-right extremists in 2018, reportedly worked closely with the SPLC, feeding the organization data on white nationalists and other groups. She said she does not consider herself Antifa, but is sympathetic to Antifa's goal of silencing racist extremists. She passed along information to those who might put it to real-world use, who might weaponize it. Squire joined the SPLC full-time in 2022 before leaving the organization in March 2025, according to her LinkedIn profile. Neither Squire nor the SPLC responded to requests for comments about relationships with Antifa. While the relationship between Antifa rioters and the SPLC remains unclear, its history suggests an investigation may prove fruitful. You think? Tyler O'Neill is senior editor at The Daily Signal and the author of 2 books, Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Woke-to-Puss, The Dark Money Cabal Manipulating the Federal Government. Tyler was our episode 260. Check that out on Rumble or anywhere you get your podcast. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Producer Steve, for 400 amazing, life-changing, glory to God, as I always say at the end, glorious shows. I think everything that can go wrong technology-wise creating a show has happened to us at least once. Probably a few more things out there we haven't thought of yet will happen. Thank you to all the guests from Martha Byrne and Nick Searcy and Republican politicians as part of my hours and hours of What is a Tennessee Republican series, including Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Tim Burchett and Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who must have vetted me ahead of time and figured I was A-OK. Even way back in the beginning, Jack Johnson, Jody Barrett, Monty Fritz, leader William Lambreth, Monty running for governor, by the way, many more. Even from as far away as South Carolina and Wyoming, Freedom Caucus, and Pete Serrano, nominated for U.S. Attorney from Washington, blocked by Democratic ancient fossil Patty Murray. See? That's why we exist, to give folks like Pete and Joe Kent, now director of the National Counterterrorism Center, and Joe Kennedy, fired for praying on the football field, now back coaching, just not in Washington. We knew these people when no one else cared. 450 of them when you count Mill Creek View's old show name. I wish we didn't have to. Come on, mainstream, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, and CNN, and the late night comedy shows. Let's live up to that fair and balanced thing. Maybe one day Democrats will even come on with me again. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. You all feel free to leave me comments, DMs on X or Instagram, where I don't have a very big following, so come on over. And who do you like to hear me have on the next 100, 401, 402 are in the can. They'll be out this week. But honestly, I just guess who I think is interesting that you'll find interesting. So let me know. Don't be shy. Peace in our time, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther 4. See you Wednesdays on Yaffe Live and Fridays on my new 3 in 3, where I run down the 3 news items in 3 minutes that the mainstream forgot to tell you, or a walk and talk, just 2 legs these days, no longer 6 solo shows without my 14-year-old co-pilot, Sweet Caroline, rest her soul. And as always, G2G, glory to God, 500, here we come. I've seen ahead in the bookings calendar, and it's going to be great. See you next time. Play that funky music, white boy.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of HeartlandJournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America.
Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.